Nothing is more fun than having to record something twice because your microphone wasn't working. Bunny Boots brought this young man to my attention through a stream he did. And I looked into it and I just found it to be absolutely hilarious. So I would like to share it with you.
One would think that after everything that's happening with Emmett Till and everything that's going on with our police and African Americans, that you wouldn't have to worry about white women making false police reports. And that's why we have laws in place, just in case someone makes a false police report.
Right there, he's just setting it up that it's a racial thing. He's making the claim at this point that it nice freeze frame, that it's because of a white woman's racism.
Let me give you guys a little bit background story. Chris and I got a detail on our car on Saturday. After the detail was done, I was missing my social security card, a box of bullets, an extra iPhone that I had in my glove compartment. They looked like they went through and made copies of all of them, because I had all my personal information was in my glove compartment locked. And all that information was gone. And then when I went back today, they gave me some yellow bag with it.
So he had his car detailed on Saturday. He's claiming that he's now missing things. And he's going back again at a later date. So I don't know exactly. Let's see. This was published on January 29th. January 29th is a Monday. So presumably he had the car detailed on Saturday. Perhaps the shop was closed on Sunday, and then he's back on Monday.
Oh, we forgot to give you your bag. And it was missing my iPhone, my vape, my bullets, my social security card. They did have my driver's license and my insurance in there, and the remote to the TVs in my car, but everything else was missing.
So we don't know that. We have him claiming that these things were in there, but please show me somebody who vapes who would leave his vape in his car while it's getting detailed. Please, I mean, vapors need their vape. Would you leave your cell phone in your car while it's getting detailed? So he's claiming these things are missing. We don't know. He's claiming that some things were returned and some things were kept. His social security card is missing, but his driver's license and insurance were returned. It just doesn't make sense.
The video that I'm going to post, the video clip now, is me. What happened was we went up there and I asked the young lady first. I asked her if I could see my invoice, and she's like, no. And I was like, okay. And she's like, we have other customers, we don't have time for you. And I was like, I'm not leaving until I get my receipt, until I find out.
So he's there. He's asking for a reprint of the receipt, first of all. And she's saying she's busy, according to him. This is his testimony. I'm going to take his testimony at face value for this. If she's busy and she doesn't have time to reprint his receipt, but he's willing to wait for it, then why is there a continued problem? I have a sneaking suspicion that the shop doesn't owe him a new receipt. He's looking for this receipt to get the name of the person who detailed his car so that he could then go to, what is the name of that?
Who was working on the car, so I can let Groupon know.
So he could go to Groupon and make a negative statement about the shop and this person on Groupon. If he was looking to file perhaps a claim with his insurance company or with their insurance or a police report, that might be different. But the shop doesn't owe him a second receipt. He probably got a receipt when he picked his car up on Saturday. It's not their fault. It's not their problem that he lost it. If they reprint a receipt for him, they are doing it out of the goodness of their hearts, and he should be patient and let her finish with her customers before he goes and demands it.
This is through Groupon. I was like, so I can let Groupon know what happened.
Because obviously if you have your iPhone and vape and bullets and social security card stolen, your natural instinct is to go tell Groupon what happened, not report it to the police, not report it to your insurance company, not report it to their insurance company, etc.
At that point, she called us the N-word. She said, I'm telling you niggers to get the fuck out of my store.
Right. In Seattle, the bastion of the last bastion of the KKK, they go around dropping N-bombs in the middle of their store. Apparently while she has other customers. Remember, she was busy, she had other customers. Now she's just throwing out the N-bomb. I believe it. Do you believe it? You should believe it, because, I mean, how could this guy possibly lie?
At that point, I had Christopher call the police, and I'll put up a screenshot of when Christopher called the police. 11 minutes later, we're still waiting for the police, and I'll let you guys know, I carry my firearm. You guys should know, I believe in my Second Amendment right to carrying my firearm. I'm a registered concealed weapons license holder. I'm legally able to carry my gun, exposed or concealed. She calls the police after we called the police, and I heard her say she was going towards the back of the store, and she goes, "There are two black men with a gun."
All right, so what would they call the police for? Just out of curiosity, would they call the police because she dropped the N-bomb? Last I checked, that's not illegal. I mean, it's distasteful, but it's not illegal. Would they call to make a police report? Well, the police are going to say you need to just come down and fill out a statement because the crime would have been 2 days old. What are the police going to do? Go down there and invest? No, that's not the way it works. So he's saying that he called the police first, but that doesn't make sense. Now, when she called the police and she said there were two black men who had a gun, she's actually making a factually correct statement. And most likely, I'm just going to throw this out there. Most likely she told them they needed to leave. Most likely she trespassed them. And at that point, it might be a good idea to call the police if they're not leaving, if they're making a ruckus, to let the police know. And throwing out the detail they have a gun will A, expedite the police response, and B, alert the police to the fact that this guy had a gun. I seriously doubt that she requested his concealed carry license. I seriously doubt she cares whether or not he has a concealed carry license. But he does have a gun on him. And an agitated, irate person who is carrying a firearm is more dangerous than an agitated, irate person who is not carrying a firearm. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I told her to say, call the police back, and this is the second 911 call, you guys can see. I said, call the police back, because I think she's making it.
So he did call the police back. There was 11 minutes. It was kind of hard to see. Let me slow that down so I could try to get an actual shot of it. We're going to go on normal speed, and it's right about...
And this is the second 911 call, you guys can see.
All right, so the first 911 call is at 8:39. He then calls this is his husband, Christopher. And then there's another 911 call at 8:50. That's 11 minutes. 8:39 to 8:50 is 11 minutes. So this has been going on for some time. At least 11 minutes.
I said, call the police back, because I think she's making it.
Now, calling the police back is kind of silly. Once the police get a call that they believe requires their attention, they're going to come out. Calling them back isn't going to do anything. They are going there to respond to two armed men, presumably having been trespassed and refusing to leave. Having the suspects call the police back and say, "Oh no, it's not really a problem." You really want the police to take that seriously? Woman calls, "Help, help, police, I'm being raped." And then a few minutes later, they get a call back from a dude, "Oh, she was just making a mistake. There was no rape going on. It's totally cool." You think the police are just going to be like, "Oh, well, I guess we'll just not respond at this point." It's silly.
A false police report, because we weren't doing any of that. Like, my gun was still on my hip. Why were you even looking if I had a gun? I can legally carry a gun in America. If it's not, if it's school, whatever.
Why were you looking at the gun? Because you were irate and you were armed. You were obviously armed. The gun was prominently displayed on your hip. Irate people with guns refusing to leave after they've been trespassed. That's cause for concern.
Public office or like a courthouse, I can carry my gun unless it specifically says on there I cannot carry my gun there.
Or if you've been trespassed.
Institution. What follows? This is what followed. This is fucking what followed. This is why we have problems with police. It's not that you guys are racist. It's not that the police are racist. It's the people who are calling the police. Just like what
race card. I'm going to tell you what. If you're not causing any problems, especially in a place like Seattle, where they're really not racist out there, I'm sorry, but if you're not causing problems, you're not going to have a lot of issues. And this guy apparently has a lot of issues with police.
About how he raped her, and that was completely false. Caucasian people and white people are using police as a tool of oppression. We've all known this for years. But now the difference is, niggas like myself are starting to get educated, we're starting to know our rights, and we're starting to report everything. Let me guys, after knowing that story, Do you think that this was appropriate, what they did to me? Do you think that was appropriate? And the only reason they respond like this is because they told me that they got a call saying that there were 2 black men with guns waving around and threatening people. You can see how I'm talking to the guy calling me at the beginning of the video. You can see me trying to explain to him what's happening to my car. Watch the video. Watch how I get treated as a fucking black person in America. Because I have the right, or I have the audacity to know my fucking right. I have the audacity to be a black man who has a Mercedes-Benz who's complaining, and then I have the audacity to carry a gun as a black man.
No, you have the audacity to cause a ruckus in a shop and then not leave when you're told to leave. That's why.
Welcome to America, folks. So there's a huge threat. No, there's a huge...
All right, I just want to point out that they picked where they started this video. We have at least 11 minutes. There's no 911 call in this video. So we have 11 minutes prior to where this video starts, where or longer. It's probably longer. So this has been going on for a while. We don't see the young white lady. We have a apparently Hispanic male. But notice that where they started recording. They're not showing any of the things that they made assertions about. They've just got this poor dude on there who's trying to be nice, probably just to stall him till the police show up.
Huge scratch. Yeah, there's a huge scratch. You can look at it on top of my thing.
So that they picked the car up on Saturday. This is probably Monday. It's at least Sunday, if not Monday. And now they've come back and they're complaining that there's a scratch on the car. I'm sorry, if once you pick up the vehicle, if you don't note any damage on there, how is the shop going to have any idea that what happened through their actions and not through your actions?
We went around the car, you guys do. It wasn't there before you started. Can you come over here, folks?
So we went around the car with you guys when we dropped it off. Presumably, you would also have gone around the car when you got it back. And if you didn't do it, well, that's on you.
I'm not really concerned about the crash. That's not really, I don't know if you guys are not really
So you can see the gun clearly displayed on his hip right there. Boom. Big old... He says he's calm, but again, we don't know what happened before that.
You can tell this is the detail, correct? Very clear.
So he makes the claim that was locked. We don't know that. It was detailed, and he's not pointing out any signs of damage where they forced their way in or anything. So I'm not entirely sure where he's going with it. I've never seen a company detail the inside of a glove box, but all right.
Thanks for cleaning it. My problem with that is, you guys put all the stuff that was in here. I had a box of bullets. A box of bullets. I had my social security card. I had an iPhone, and I had in my glove compartment.
So we've heard the sirens come up. He's still claiming that these things were in there. We don't have any actual proof.
No, it was not, sir. This was all in there. That's what I'm telling you. Look at this. What is this right here? What is this? This is my license and registration, correct? Why would this be in my...
All right, I'm going to slow it down a little bit because this is a very telling statement that comes up next.
Trunk in the bag. Where do you keep your license and registration?
Of course. So they brought AR-15s out again.
Of course, then they brought AR-15s out again. Now, I don't know if you've ever had occasion to utter a sentence like that about the police, but that's a telling statement. They brought the AR-15s out again, meaning this is not the first time. Just ponder that for a second.
Okay, get them on the recording. Hi, officer. Get this on recording, Chris. I am an armed man. I do have my...
At this point, I don't know why they have their guns drawn. I called them. Well, but you do know why they have their guns drawn. Because you said that you heard her calling the police, telling the police there were 2 armed men. Your story's changed slightly. Sometimes it was that you were waving the gun around. Sometimes it's that you were threatening them with the gun. I don't know what she actually said. I'm going to assume she said, there's 2 black men here who I've told to leave the store. They're not leaving. One of them is armed. I'm going to guess that's what she said. This is an appropriate police response to that. Because the police don't know. I mean, he might think I'm not going to shoot anybody, but the police don't know what he's thinking.
My arm on me. No one's being threatened. No one has been threatened.
Now he's making the claim that no one's being threatened, no one has been threatened, but again, they don't know that. They can't just take the suspect at his word. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works.
My name is Carlos Dillard. Why are you coming up to me with AK-47?
Why are you coming up to me with AK-47s? That's a stupid thing to say on so many levels. He knows why they're coming up to him armed. He also knows they're AR-15s because his husband had previously stated that.
Why are you coming up to me with guns?
So he's just being difficult at this point. It goes on a little bit. They do manage to get him to comply.
Put your guns down, sir. Turn my back if you got.
They're asking him to turn around and get on the ground. He still doesn't know why they have their guns aimed at him. Yeah. He's a big old victim. He doesn't know why. We already established they know why. They're following police procedure. They're asking him to turn around and get on the ground because he is being detained. They don't have to tell him why he's being detained. But even if they did, he knows why he's being detained. Because the gal called on him and she said that there's armed men who aren't leaving her shop. So it's all, oh, Crimea River, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not going to drag you through any of that. But then we got this bad boy right here. Now, again, note that this is only a 3-minute video. And always ask yourself what isn't recorded here. So we got a whole bunch of nothing going on. Why they left this part in and not the previous part where he left, because he will say later that he was gone for about 5 minutes. But he comes home. I must have skipped by that. Come on. Where's that? There we go. He comes home. That's him. That's Carlos. He goes in. He talks to his husband. They turn on the light. What's going on? We don't know. He comes back out. There's a knock at the door or something. He goes to see what's going on. He tries to lock him out. They're like, no. What's going on? He goes outside with them. So now if he is being arrested or detained, it's out there. And then he pulls into the house. So if you run into a house, the police can follow you. They can, if they're in active pursuit, they could chase you into your house. They don't need a warrant because they're just continuing a stop that started outside. You'll see they're not being terribly aggressive. They push away the boyfriend a couple times, but they're not hitting him. They're not beating him. They're not, no tasers, no mace. They do keep him from going back in there. But that's, I mean, they can't have dude running around. He might be grabbing a gun or something. They want to keep him out where they could see him. So he just went back to get his phone. He's recording it. Great. They've detained him. They haven't shot the dog. They haven't beat anybody up. They're not throwing punches at him. He was resisting the whole time. It's a nothing burger. You're not gonna find a cop who's gonna throw that one out there and be like, oh, police brutality in your home. And then we got this, and I'm not going to drag you through this, but I found it to be quite hilarious, and we're going to speed through it because it's very telling.
All right, guys. So I finally got the police report from the incident that happened on February 2nd, where the police broke into my home literally without a warrant, without detaining me, without telling me I was under arrest, and
they broke into his home. No, they didn't. They chased you into your house. You probably were aware you were being detained because they were trying to grab you. That's a good indicator. They don't have to be like, you're being detained. They were attempting to detain or arrest you. If they get called out on a domestic violence call, they will arrest somebody. They will not leave two people alone in the house if they've had calls of domestic violence. That's just the way it works. Everywhere I'm aware of in the U.S., if the police respond to domestic violence, somebody's going to jail.
Me and my husband, they literally pushed Christopher's face into a couple picture frames and cut up his face, and you guys saw, and I'll post pictures of what they did to me as well, but you guys...
Whoa, I must have missed that earlier. So they're saying they cut up his face? That's interesting.
They literally pushed Christopher's face into a couple picture frames and cut up his face, and you guys saw, and I'll post
they pushed his face into picture frames and cut up his face.
So what
Let's do that one more time, because...
I want to read the police report, without detaining me, without telling me I was under arrest. And they brutalized me and my husband. They literally pushed Christopher's face into a couple picture frames and cut up his face.
They pushed his face into picture frames and cut up his face. Well, that's interesting because I didn't see that. Did you see that? We're in here. He's recording. Notice that we don't get to see this phone recording that they are allowing him to make. Notice that we don't get to see Christopher's face in this. And this is, that arrest was on the 2nd, February 2nd. They published this on the 2nd. It happened sometime around 1 a.m., according to Carlos. So this is 21 days later. I'm assuming that any cuts to his face would still be somewhat apparent. I'm assuming that he would have documented it had it actually happened.
And you guys saw, and I'll post the pictures of what they did to me as well, but you guys kind of saw what they were doing to me on the video. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to read police reports side by side with the video because there's a lot of just lies. I try to be politically correct and say...
Yeah, he does lie a lot. Not the police. He lies.
No, they just blatantly lied on a lot of this. So I'm going to just start off and read it. Let's go. On February 2nd, 2018, at approximately 1:18 in the morning, I was dispatched to disturbance at my home. Then they gave my address. Dispatch stated that reporting party is following the sounds of object.
So they're saying why they were called out. And I'm gonna slow this down because this is a little bit important.
Read it. Let's go. On February 2nd, 2018, at approximately 1:18 in the morning, I was dispatched to a disturbance at my home.
So they were dispatched to a disturbance at his home.
Then they gave my address. Dispatch stated that reporting party is calling the sounds of subjects fighting in an apartment. Dispatch stated that there was a history of the same at the address.
So they're responding to a domestic violence call, and they were saying there is a history. Now this is where it gets hilarious.
We've never had the police calling on us, besides from our upstairs neighbor who does it every other day.
We've never had the police called on us, aside from our upstairs neighbor who calls every other day. What the actual F does, like, you... What? So you have the police called on you every other day. That's what you're saying. So there's a history. That's the precise meaning of there is a history. Good Lord.
He does not like us. But we've never caught Christopher.
So if let's assume that what he's saying, let's assume he's using a little bit of hyperbole. And the upstairs neighbor calls often. Not every other day. Let's just say he calls often. If there was nothing to his calls, he, the neighbor, upstairs neighbor, would get in trouble for abuse of 911. So let's think about that. Let's keep everything in context.
He's never called the police on me. I've never called the police on him. We've never had any domestic violence issues.
So I don't know why he cares that he's never called on Chris and Chris has never called on him. That's immaterial. We know that the upstairs neighbor calls often.
Yeah, dispatch stated that there was a history of the same at this address, which is a complete lie. Christopher and I have never called the police on one another, and the only other time that has happened is when our neighbor called the police on us when we were having a threesome.
So now another neighbor has called on him when they were having a threesome. I'm going to go ahead and call BS. First of all...
And he said that he didn't like the fact that there was gay sex.
First of all, Seattle is... Just like Seattle isn't the bastion for the KKK, Seattle also isn't a bastion for right-wing conservative Christians. It's not. If the neighbor called because they were having gay sex, the police would not respond. He would not know about it. Police don't come out for calls of gay sex. I mean, unless like they're doing it out in the open or it's rape or whatever. Two consenting adults, two consenting spouses having gay sex in their house, the police aren't going to respond.
Going on in his neighborhood, and he told the police that night.
And he told the police that night. It's amazing what this guy knows about conversations between his neighbors and the police.
And we made an official complaint against the police, and I made an official complaint against my neighbor. Dispatch stated that the reporting party can still hear the sounds of two males slamming around in the apartment. Okay, so from this point, dispatch just said that people are fighting, people are in danger. This is very important.
Dispatch didn't say that people are fighting, people are in danger. They heard that there's still people slamming around. That doesn't mean that people are fighting or in danger. It could be just breaking stuff. It could just be throwing temper tantrums. But it is important. You're correct.
Important for what's going to come up next. Officer George and I arrived at the scene and I observed a maroon Mercedes, which is my car, going speeding past us towards the exits of the apartments. What's speeding?
Well, I'm sure the officer can tell what aggressive or speedy driving is. It's faster. It's noticeable. It drew his attention. So,
what's speeding?
What's speeding?
That's not speeding. And a lot of what you notice on this police report is their wording is a lot vague. What's speeding? Did you clock?
What's speeding? It's the officer's interpretation of what he saw. That's what it is. He's not saying that you're guilty for speeding, because then you would actually have to provide more details. He is merely stating that the maroon Mercedes leaving the apartment drew his attention, thus explaining why he marked the return of the maroon Mercedes. Leaving the apartment wasn't a crime. He's not saying that you were breaking any laws. He's just saying that you drew his attention.
Did you have me on a speedometer? Like, did you have me?
Did you have me on a speedometer, dummy?
On a radar? What's speedingly? You're trying to make it sound like I was just driving aggressively.
Exactly. He's making it sound like you were driving aggressively. He noticed you. You drew his attention.
And if that was the case, as an officer, and you just got dispatched to my home and you saw my car drive away, and they know it was my car because the last time they came to my home.
The last time they came to his home. So let's just step back a little bit and start breaking this down a little bit. The officer sees a maroon Mercedes driving aggressive out of the complex. He notes it. It draws his attention. Your assumption is that he, A, knows that it's your car and it belongs to your apartment. He knows your apartment. He knows that you live in your apartment. He knows all these things. He is intimately knowledgeable about you and your situation. That's retarded. He is on a call for domestic violence. You said it yourself. The action is still happening. They still hear the sounds of people banging around. So your implication that the officer should drop the domestic violence call to instead take off after a car that's driving aggressively is moronic.
They asked me if that was my car.
So because a police officer asked you at some point in time if that was your car when they were at your house responding to a call that we never have anybody called to our house, and yet the last time they called, they asked about your car. Implying that one officer at that one time and then spread that knowledge to the entire police department is ludicrous.
Because it was parked in the driveway, and I said, yes, that is my car, but that's none of your concern. So they knew, but then they didn't come after me.
They didn't come after you because they were responding to a call of domestic violence at your address. They have not associated that car with the address yet.
And this is going to be very important. When I left the house, I was actually going to the store to get a cigar, because that's when I'm going through stress.
What? When you're going through stress, you need to go to the store to get a cigar? Color me shocked. Now, what could possibly be causing you stress? Maybe the domestic violence?
I'm getting a cigar. And I will tell you guys a little bit of a backstory after I read the police report.
We're not going to go through that. You can watch it on your own time if you want.
Officer George and I were, okay, we already read that. I observed a black, Mercedes, and then, well, this is where it gets confusing. I observed the same Mercedes speeding past us at a high rate of speed, parked in front of the residence. Okay, so let me reread this sentence again.
I'll let you reread it.
George and I arrived on the scene, and I observed a maroon Mercedes speeding past us speeding towards the exits of the apartment. As Officer George and I were approaching the apartments, I observed the same Mercedes speeding past us at a high rate of speed, parked in front of the residence. How did you not knock on my door by then? If you've
Maybe because they're walking around trying to hear if they hear the sound of domestic violence going on.
If the 911 dispatch is like, hey, there's been violence before, I left, I was gone for 5 minutes. So you're telling me that it took...
He claims he was gone for 5 minutes. If he was all stressed out needing to go get a cigar, was he gone for 5 minutes? How do you know?
You and your partner 5 minutes to get out of your SWAT cars, knock on my door? No, you were waiting for me to come back. You were waiting for me to come back, and makes perfect...
How do you know they were waiting for you to come back? Again, you're imputing knowledge to them that they don't necessarily have. You're saying that they should have come after you because they knew it was you, and now you're saying that because they knew it was you, they were waiting for you to come back. It doesn't make sense, bro. They could have stopped you for presumably speeding, giving them every right to detain you, to question you, etc., and avoid having to go into your apartment at all, if that's really what they wanted to do. And yet they didn't.
Makes sense of why they did this. I observed a male. I observed a black male exit the vehicle, and he stated, "Fuck you guys," and started running towards the apartment. I didn't run towards anywhere. I never said "fuck you guys." They don't have any of this on record. All it is...
Well, yeah, and you don't have any of that stuff on record either, all the assertions you made. So, I mean, the testimony of the police officers to what happened is just as good as the testimony of you as to what happened, except juries are much more likely to believe the word of the police officer.
Literally hearsay, and from all the other lies you're seeing in this police report, these guys are just bad cops. These are just bad cops, and I've already made a complaint against them before, but this time they were trying to make sure that they got me, and they didn't realize that I had security cameras, and started to run towards the apartment. Okay, this is where the video comes in handy. So he says I was running towards the apartment in the video, and sorry if I'm looking down because I'm actually watching the video on my tablet. When I walked in the door at second 38, I'm literally
Yeah, well, so maybe you ran up the steps, you got to the door, you opened it up, and you walked through. He just said you were running towards the apartment. Maybe that's just running up the steps. I don't know. But anyway, I think I've shown enough stupidity on this one. I would like to point now to the reason, perhaps one of the underlying reasons they may be doing this. It could be that they're trying to make money off of it. Could be. But they also have a history. This is from a local news outlet. Bellevue man attacked by fellow bus passenger. This is the husband that was punched because the guy in front of me had his window open, but he had the wrong window open, so he wasn't getting the air that he wanted, Dillard said. I told him this several times. Hey, you know, it's kind of cold. It's raining on my face. You're not getting the air you want. It's all coming on me. Dillard closed the man's window. He proceeded to tell me, oh, if you have a problem, we can go off to the next stop. The man opened the window again, Dillard said. Water started hitting Dillard's face, so he closed the window back up. Then the man punched him in the eye. Now, again, you're just getting a Dillard side of the story. This is the husband, Christopher. But you could just see, I mean, they're drama queens. They like drama. They get the police called on them all the time. At home, at shops, it's drama. The police in this video, very professional, didn't rough them up. The police in this video, very professional, didn't rough them up. There's nothing that I heard on the police report that he read that would make me think that they did anything wrong. It's just all nonsense, but it's kind of humorous, and I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day.